If you're looking to pick up some power for your 2015 or newer EcoBoost or PowerBoost F-150, regardless if you have the 2.7 or 3.5 liter, the CVF Titan V2 intercooler in black is a mod you'll want to check out. This is tailored to the F-150 owner who wants to drastically improve the performance of their turbo system by keeping temps way down for better drivability no matter what driving style you have, whether you just want a quicker truck day to day or want more consistent performance when you're towing or hauling with your F-150. It's also a bolt-on mod that doesn't require any modifications or a tune, making it an easy way to bump up your numbers in a durable and reliable way. Now, the factory intercooler definitely does its job, but it's definitely also not an overachiever, being very restrictive, small, and more fragile, especially with the plastic end tanks. This, however, has a much greater core volume than the OE setup, about 82%, and you can visually see the difference in the two side by side. This one is massive compared to it. Now, according to CVF's numbers, it also has a 40+ degree reduction in charge air temperature, which is substantial, creating room for more air to flow into the manifold, resulting in more consistent power in the low end, which will be felt in your throttle response. While being much bigger than factory, it's also much more durable than factory with a full aluminum construction, holding up better than the plastic end tanks, which can crack over time from either high boost pressure and just simply wear. Now, this can handle wide open throttle situations over time and not give in thanks to the solid end tanks and a higher flow construction compared to the stock unit. This also has a TIG welded bar and plate construction for solid durability and even a condensation drain on the cold side end tank to let out any fluid buildup in the system. Now, the entire system is also covered in a black powder coat to resist any corrosion and also just fits well into a stealthier build if you prefer black components over polished ones. This is about $800 and will save you a few bucks compared to others in the category. One of the biggest takeaways here is the size and the construction being more than double the size of factory and much more durable for higher performance applications. And this even has the addition of that cold side drain, which not every choice has. This intercooler is even 27% larger than CVF's previous model, according to them, being the V2 here, which is a substantial improvement and is doing all of this at a more cost-effective price point compared to other premium choices, making it a great pick if you want quality for your F-150 and to save money for other supporting mods in the meantime. Install here is a direct bolt-on replacement and requires no permanent modifications other than the removal of the active grille shutters, which can be reinstalled if you ever want to take this off. So no permanent modifications here. Now, with that being said, this gets a 2 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, and with the right tools and setup, it should take you about 2 hours or so to get the job done. However, at this point, I'm going to pass you over to one of our installers. They're going to show you a detailed breakdown on how this bolts up to your F-150, whether you're just curious about the install or you're tackling this yourself. So that's going to wrap it up for me. Let's go ahead and get into the install.
Tools required for this install include an impact gun, a ratchet, a clip remover tool, flathead screwdriver, plastic pry tool, scissors or diagonal cutters, 8mm wrench, an extension, 7, 8, 10, 13, and 21mm sockets, and a few zip ties. What's up, guys? Today we're installing an intercooler on our F-150. Now, the first thing we're going to do is remove our front bumper to make this a little bit easier. So we're going to watch an uninstall video showing you how to do that, and I'll meet you back here to remove the intercooler.
Before we start the install, I do want to state that we got our truck on the lift. That's just to make the video a little bit easier to shoot. If you guys don't have a lift or a jack, you could definitely get this done on the ground. With that out of the way though, grab a trim panel removal tool or a flathead screwdriver, maybe one wrapped in some electrical tape so you don't mess up the plastic on the front of your F-150. We're gonna peel away these caps on our front bumper. That's gonna reveal some hardware for us to remove so we can get this bumper out of the way. So with that plastic piece off, you can see these two 21mm nuts here. We're gonna remove both of those. However, I am gonna thread one back on just to hold the bumper on while we remove the rest of the hardware. Then once this is ready to come off, that'll be easy to reach because it's on the front. And we're gonna do the same exact thing on this side as well. So now we're gonna crawl underneath of our truck, and on the outside of the frame rail, we're gonna find another 21mm bolt. We're gonna take that off with the impact. And obviously, we're gonna do the same thing on the other side as well. Now, before we pull this bumper off, one thing you wanna make sure of, you wanna disconnect any electronics, any parking sensors, adaptive cruise control, stuff like that, but most of you will probably have this one, and it's the fog lights. You wanna do that on both sides. Now, all of the hardware should be disconnected, all the electronics should be disconnected. One last thing we have to do is just remove the nuts we left on here just for safety's sake, and then we can pull this bumper off the truck.
So we're gonna start underneath the truck now. We have our inlet and outlet to remove, as well as our recirc valve, and we have to disconnect a connector off of our recirc valve. So we'll start off on the passenger side here, disconnecting these two clamps that hold our couplers on. Just grab a 7mm socket to loosen those up. And then you can start wiggling off those couplers. Next, we can disconnect our outlet as well as our recirc valve. On the recirc valve, take this piece and twist it and pull back. And then we have our connector back here for the recirc valve. Just press in that tab and pop that connector out. And then for our intercooler outlet, we're gonna need to pry back on this ring here. So grab yourself a couple flathead screwdrivers and we're gonna pop that out, slide right off that fitting. So now I grab myself a buddy to help me wiggle this out. We have to remove this lower plate. We've got a 13mm bolt on each side. So I'm gonna take mine out, pass the gun over to him, and then we're just gonna maneuver this out. So now we're just gonna wiggle that bracket off the grommets and now maneuver this out. Next, we need to remove our shutter assembly. Now our intercooler is a good bit thicker than the factory one, so this is gonna get in the way. So we have a couple clips holding this wire harness in, as well as two 8mm screws at the top and two 10mm bolts at the bottom. I'm gonna grab my clip remover tool and start popping out these clips. Now we also have a connector right at the top here. So I'm just gonna press in on that black tab and push that connector back and off. And I'll swing this harness out of the way. We have one more connector on the actuator for our shutter assembly that we'll get once we can pull this out a little bit. So next I'll take a 10mm socket for these bottom two bolts. Next we'll get the two 8mm bolts at the top here. I'm using a 1/4" ratchet with an 8mm socket. So just slide that in, start loosening it up. Now we're running out of room there with our ratchet and socket, so I'm just gonna get in there with an 8mm wrench and finish removing that bolt. Now we'll do the same thing on this side. Just get it as far off as you can with the ratchet and socket. You don't want your tool to get stuck in there. And then switch over to that 8mm wrench to finish it off. Now once you have all those bolts removed, you can lift up This connector back here is on a clip, so grab your clip remover tool and work that off. And now we have access to the actuator for our shutter assembly. Push in the black tab and pull that connector off. Now we need to transfer over everything from our stock intercooler to our new one. We've got our 4 grommets, our 2 couplers, and our recirc valve that we're gonna swap over. So I'm gonna start with the recirc valve here. We've got an 8mm bolt holding it in up here. Just grab an 8mm socket to remove that. Now you won't be reusing that. Once you have that out, you're gonna twist to the left until that comes out. And then we'll drop it in over here, twist it to the right. And then we have a 10mm bolt that's included in our kit that we're gonna thread into the intercooler. And then tighten that down with a 10mm socket. Now next we'll switch over to a 7mm socket to remove our 2 couplers. So just loosen up that clamp. And then you can just twist this off. Drop it onto our new intercooler. And then tighten that down with that same 7mm socket. And then do the same thing for the other coupler. Now my clamps fell off when I removed it, so I'm just gonna slide those back on, and then we can work on our grommets. Same thing as the couplers, just pull and twist, and then just press it onto your new one. And do that same thing for your other 3 grommets. And now with that done, we're ready to get our intercooler onto the truck. So now I've got my buddy here. We're gonna put our bracket onto our intercooler, lift it up into place, and thread our bolts into these U-clips. So now we're gonna tighten down the clamps on our couplers. So pinch that nice and tight, get your clamp in place, and take your 7mm socket to tighten it down. And do that same thing up top. Get that pipe fully seated in the coupler. And then get your coupler, or your clamp in place. Tighten that down with the 7mm socket as well. Now next we can come over to the driver's side to reconnect our outlet, our recirc valve, and the connector on our recirc. Now the harness came off. This was the part that was clipped into the top of the shutter assembly, so we're gonna have to fish that around our intercooler towards the front of the truck. So I'm gonna do that first. And then you can plug in that connector and then pull your slack the rest of the way through. The recirc valve pipe, you can just press into place. And just give it a tug, make sure it's not coming back off. And then we are gonna have to replace the ring on here to get this to lock into place. Stretch that around and rotate it until it clips in to all of those spots. Right there, it clips in nice. So now we just push it on. And then just like the recirc valve, give it a tug. So that wasn't fully seated yet. And now giving that a good tug, it's not going anywhere. Now with our new thicker intercooler installed, we aren't gonna be able to get the shutter assembly reinstalled because it just sticks out too far. So to solve that, we can cut a good bit off of this all the way around to get it to sit up against the intercooler and still be able to bolt into the frame horns. However, for demonstration purposes, we're not going to be cutting into this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna remove this actuator for our shutter assembly. We need this plugged in regardless of if we have this in or not, so that we don't get a check engine light. And this will also provide better airflow into your intercooler. So grab a flathead screwdriver and just pry up the 2 tabs. Then you can pull that off. And then just wiggle that actuator out until it pops free. So now we're gonna take that actuator and just zip tie it up against the frame here. Now we've got this oval hole a little higher up, and then also this hole for if you have a tow hook. We don't have a tow hook, so I'm gonna use that hole. If you did, you could use this hole further back. So I've got 2 zip ties put together. I'm gonna go up through the bottom hole and then get it out of that side hole. And then I'm gonna take my actuator and plug in the connector. And then just put this up on the frame. Zip tie it nice and tight. And then take a pair of scissors or diagonal cutters and just cut off the excess of that zip tie. And now the last thing we need to do before we get to putting the bumper back on is connecting our harness. We have the connector over here that we ran for our recirc valve. Go ahead and plug that in. And then we're gonna tuck our harness up over the intercooler in that gap. And then I'll run that fog light connector over towards where the fog lights are gonna go. Now the last thing we need to do is reinstall our bumper. So I'm just gonna lift this up, get it onto our studs on each side, and then I'm gonna thread those nuts on. So now we'll thread on those 2 nuts. Now we also have a nut and bolt at the bottom outside corner of each side. However, ours are missing, so we don't have anything to put back there. So now I'm just gonna lift up on the bumper and take my 21mm socket to tighten these down. And then do that same thing on the other side. Next we can grab our lower grill, line up all of our clips first, and then press it in. Now last thing we need to do is reconnect our fog lights. So we'll just slide our connector up, press it until we hear that click, and do the exact same thing on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the CVF Titan V2 intercooler in black for your 2015 and newer 2.7 liter and 3.5 liter EcoBoost F-150 and 2021 and newer 3.5 liter PowerBoost F-150. Thank you for watching, and for all things F-150, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.